Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am your host, Carmen White Yannick, and this is my show, Brave Interviews. I'm currently waiting on my guest, but I'm going to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about this show and why I began it. I started Brave Me Nation a few years ago in a point in my life where I'm summonsing, right? I was bringing forward, there we go. I was bringing forward bravery in my own life. And I knew this is what I always know. Anytime there are things that show up for me, I know they don't just show up for me, they show up for other people too. Here's Keith. I'm going to add you to the stream in just a second. And so I know that when things show up, when they show up for me, they don't just show up for me alone, that they show up for other people as well. And so when I get a little tap on the shoulder, a little whisper in my ear, I know that that's something that for me, but also for me to share and to release into the world. And Brave Me Nation was one of those things. And as I began to move this initiative forward of My Black Mental Health Matters and began to get deeper into advocacy and activism for mental health, period, and overall, I wanted to use my platform for good. And that's how I came up with, and that's how Brave Interviews came about. I wanted to talk to people about their journeys of how they've been brave, how they've become bolder, how they have used their journey, and how their journey has been a brilliant pathway to discovering and unveilings of other parts of themselves that they didn't know until they got themselves into this particular space. And to talk about how mental health and mental health challenges and emotional trauma, how that has been interwoven inside of their life and how they have overcome any type of derailments. And so that is why I created Brave Interviews. And today it gives me so much joy to welcome to this platform my new super friend. I'm calling him a super friend because he's extraordinary. My new super friend. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Kelly McLeod Shingen. My new super friend, Keith Allen West. Keith is an extraordinary human, period. He has a multiplicity of gifts. And I also would like to say a multiplicity of graces in his life. He's been a serial entrepreneur. He is also an award-winning actor, director, and screenplay writer. And he has a beautiful new pilot out called Desperately Superficial. I believe that is right. And welcome right now to Brave Interviews, my new super friend, Keith Allen West.
Hey everybody.
Hey.
How are you? Sorry, we're mobile at the moment because okay. I do have one addiction in my life, which is coffee. So we had to come over to my espresso machine so I can get amen, girl. Amen. Girl. See?
Amen. Saying.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. And I was behind on getting to you by a minute or two. So I did not get my fresh cup. So in order for us to have a fresh talk, girl, we got to have a fresh cup. So we are doing that. So,
and I said the wrong title. The title of his pilot is Deeply Superficial.
I am deeply superficial, baby. Deeply.
I got my D's wrong. So
that's
here
right.
we are.
It's okay. It's
okay.
It's all good. All right, now we're back to where we can sit. Okay, so I will stop moving, and people won't get dizzy on us, and they won't. I don't want any vertigo. Although we are talking about mental health issues, so vertigo might fit in there. Okay, got
vertigo just might fit in. I can't. This is my shirt.
I love it. Oh, yay!
So I'm excited to have you on today. Listen, when we talked with you 2 weeks ago, Kelly and I, my brain was exploding as you began to speak about your journey, your businesses and even your marriage and subsequent divorce, and then how that journey led you to where you are today, something that you had not studied to become, something that you had not entered into the field. I'm going to say that it entered somewhere. There was some, probably, I'm sure, with your personality, there was some tendency somewhere to get into acting, but it opened up the way and gave you access in a way that you did not even know was available to yourself after such a tragic time in your life. So I am just going to yield the mic, if you will, to you, and just have you talk to us about that discovery and how you came to it, and then how mental health was interwoven inside of that story and narrative.
Yeah. So one of the that when I think about, especially what led me to acting. So for me, with mental health issues, we spend a lot of our time acting like we're okay.
Oh, that's so good. Yes.
So what I realized was, especially in I'm going to be really broad here and say, in today's society, a lot of times what we talk about when people say, "How are you?" our immediate answer is okay. We don't even take a second to stop and think, "How am I today?" Like, literally, what am I feeling? What am I doing? What am I, how am I today? The answer is always okay. Or my common answer now is amazing, because life has gotten amazing for me. But
Yes.
there were years and years and years and years and years that you're not okay, but you don't really know it. You've gotten used to that feeling of. So for me, I'll back up even a little more. So for me, depression was the first thing that was an issue in my life, a diagnosis, whatnot. The way depression comes through for me isn't necessarily sadness. It comes through more as irritation. Why did you put that coffee cup there? You know that coffee cup doesn't go there. You did that just to you know better. So it's little things that just irritate me is kind of how my depression comes through. And the other thing is lack of excitement, lack of energy. So kind of just like, I could get up and do something today, but there's Netflix. Let's do that instead. So that's kind of how it would come through for me. And I also realized, being in an unhappy marriage, that I spent a lot of time being more worried about the marriage looking good to the outside world. And then, luckily through years of therapy and lots of espresso, what I realized was, I got engaged at 21, and, I believe in a long engagement. So we had a long engagement. We were together, ended up being together for 24 years, but I was in love with the idea of marriage. I was in love with the idea of being in love. So I think that was my first casting job. Like, I literally was just like, I need somebody who's attractive. I need somebody who seems like they've got their shit together. Okay, yeah, you're gonna do, right? And because I come from a broken home, my parents got divorced when I was 18. So, they were together most of the time I was growing up, even though I knew they weren't going to stay together. There was no question. I don't know if you're good at math, my dear. I'm sure you are, because you're brilliant. But this is the story I tell people. Okay, my parents got married in April. I was born in June.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so
I'm tracking.
yeah,
I've had four, so I know how that goes. So yes.
Yeah, so she was, she dropped out of Catholic high school.
Oh no.
Her senior year. So that I knew right away that was not a marriage based in love. That was a marriage based in, it was 1971, and
Come on.
You did the deed, so you're gonna follow through. So my thing was, I am not gonna have a marriage that fails, and the only reason a marriage fails is because you don't do your part and you don't try it. And no, marriages fail. Shit happens. Stuff comes up. It's okay. So
isn't it amazing? I just want to interject here because
Please.
the conditioning is our environmental conditioning is so strong. And the messages that come to us at a very early age, in formative years, of how things ought to be, how
Right.
things should be, and we follow things that are not necessarily what's really in us to follow, but the conditioning is
Yes.
so strong and is so powerful, it kind of overwhelms any real desires that we may have, and then we fall into what we call ruts, right? We fall into these things and these patterns of behavior from our family pathology, right? And here we are making decisions and choices for our lives, and sometimes for a lifetime,
based on shit that we just came up with that has no reason.
Yes, because 1971, no one was saying you can raise that child together. The family, the villages can come together to raise this child, but your ass ain't got to get married.
Right. Yes.
Nobody,
yes.
and especially you're in Catholic school, Lord have all the mercy. There is no way. No, you were getting married. You were gonna get married. Don't matter what you look like coming down that aisle, or we did it in a little corner somewhere where we weren't gonna celebrate this situation. We're not, and so the thing that strikes me with your story is how you come into the world in shame.
Yes.
That's a big one. Shame is huge, and how it plays out in our lives, and especially when we begin to learn the narratives of our parents.
Oh boy.
It's like,
what do they say? Sins of the father? Isn't that one of the yeah.
If you have not talked to your parents, my father's been gone for over 40 years.
Wow.
I am 55, soon to be 56. And my father's been gone for 45 years this past March. And so getting his story, I didn't really get his story. So I have these bits. And yes, Kelly, religion compounds that shame. Exactly. I have these bits and pieces, but I've been able to talk with my mother, and then I've been able to talk with my dad's siblings to piece some of these the parts of this tapestry that came and made my life. And I showed up. Listen, my parents had just remarried or got remarried right after my birth.
Oh.
My parents were married to one another twice.
Because you know what? We've learned in life, if we fucked it up the first time, let's try it again.
Let's do it all over again. Yeah. And because they were together since high school. Oh. You know, they were high school sweethearts and all that kind of thing. And so, so I love, thank you so much for bringing that into the space, because that thing about shame, and then coupled with religion, I grew up in the church. I grew up in, yes, come on, hallelujah. Yes, my great grandfather was the pastor of our church growing up. That church is still
pressure there. No pressure there. You're related to the no. Ooh, that family, all that. Ooh, that family. They just they got their,
come on. That was the family business. Literally, that was the family business. Yeah. I am an ordained minister myself. However, yes. So however, what I believe today, and I'm sure it's true for you too, what I believe today, as opposed to what I believed growing up. Oh, it's like worlds.
Sidebar. Don't you love it when we are young and stupid, but we think we know everything? We got it all figured out. And I look back now, and I giggle at myself, because I have, we have to be gentle to our younger selves that didn't know better.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I giggle. And that's why when I know many people who are like, oh, I wish I was back in high school, and I'm like, bitch, you crazy. I wouldn't go back there.
Hells
Well, what if
to
you knew
the
everything you knew
no,
now? I'm like, no, I would
no,
not go back,
no,
period. I don't
no,
care.
no,
No. All
no,
those shows where you go back in time and you fix what was wrong with, no.
no, 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 no.
Everything I fucked up made me who I am. Why would I go back?
You just
Why
preached
would
the
I go
word right there. Amen.
like you brought up? Why would I go back and mess with the weave of that tapestry?
Mm-mm,
Because I don't know what I'm going to get. I know
mm-mm.
exactly what I got based on how I got to where I am now, and I know how to live with the tapestry I have. It's not no. It's like those movies where they're like, oh, we found dinosaur DNA. Let's see what happens if we put that into a chicken. Well, none of those movies ever go right. So no, don't mess with it. No. Yeah.
They just don't. It's funny. Kelly said, LOL, the family business. I literally have never said that before today. I literally have never said it before, but it's true. There's so many in my family. My brother is also a pastor. It's just on and on both sides of my family. And I believe that today, quote unquote ministry is so many things, but I get to bring my full self.
Right.
Into everything that I do, and with and unapologetically.
Exactly.
Unapologetically.
That's another thing that is interesting for me is, so one of the people that have helped me a lot through just depression and mental illness and being yourself and whatever is Brene Brown. So if you've not read Brene Brown, who talks about shame. So for me, that's one of the reasons that with my depression, with my ADD and whatnot, is my ex used to use it against me. So whenever there was an argument, a disagreement, or whatever, it was things like, oh, well, we know you're not right in the head, so you're not really thinking right on this.
Wow.
So here's what we should do. Or, oh, yeah, that's, no, that's, yeah, we know we can't trust your thoughts, so let's do it this way. So what I realized was in my world, when it was just he and I that talked about my depression, then it was kept in the dark. But by being able to put light on it, which Brene Brown talks about is the best disinfectant, right? Light.
Yes.
If there's no shame to it. So that's one of the reasons that I'm happy to talk about it, because I've been the person who doesn't want to talk about their depression or their ADD or whatnot. So, and like growing up, I was dyslexic, which we didn't figure out till like third grade. So I was just the stupid kid who couldn't spell, the stupid kid who couldn't do math, all that. Then once we realized it was dyslexia and how to spend time figuring that out, all of a sudden I was the smartest kid in class. So, but we've got to show light on those things. And by all means, I am not saying that to live a happy life, you have to come out, whether it's like me coming out at 18, being gay or whatever. Your journey is your journey. So when you want to talk about your mental illness, preach, do it, but don't feel pressured to do it. I don't want to force people into the light. Run to the light, Carol Ann, run to the light, like they said in Poltergeist. But I'm happy in the light. So the light makes me happy. Sharing my journey makes me happy. And, my journey has included a few things. Number one, I believe that my ADD and my dyslexia are a brain chemistry issue. Therefore, we talk about that in public the same way I talk about somebody's heart arrhythmia or lung issues or asthma. It is a medical, physical condition that I take my pills every day without shame or guilt or anything, because it helps the chemistry in my brain work better. So I call it better living through pharmaceuticals. You know what? If your pharmaceutical is medical marijuana, you go, girl. You get your medical marijuana. If you're, whatever, if it is improving your life, take the pills every day and be happy. And that was another thing that my ex used to use against me. Whenever I would disagree with him, he would say things like, oh, well, you're off your meds, aren't you? Oh, you must be off your meds. No, baby, I live on those meds every day of my life because they make me happier. They make me able to get through life. So no, there's no question of Keith going off his meds. Keith is on his meds because they are integral to who I am. Then the other part of that is, like you and I talk about, the reason we have bonded is journeys. All of us are on a journey in life. So talk therapy has helped me when I needed it. So I am never, I loved it. Was it like maybe in the late 80s when it was like popular to have a therapist? People like Madonna had like 6 therapists they went to see. Oh, it's Monday, I go see Dr. Blah Blah, right? So there was a time when it was kind of cool, hip, happening to have a therapist, and then all of a sudden, we got kind of that shame thing brought back in. One of the things that I've noticed, so I was married to a Black man for 24 years, so I also got to see shame in the Black community that I think that a lot of us white folk maybe haven't seen, because that's a whole different layer of shame too, on top of the regular stuff.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And so let me dial it back a little bit just to give some history. So back in slavery, and for our audience, and this may be helpful to you as well, Keith, but back in slavery, anytime, and even during the Middle Passage, when Africans were coming from the continent to here, and during the diaspora, everybody was going in all these different places. What happened was anyone that was infirmed in any kind of way, inclusive of mental illness, you've got to think about what could have caused temporary mental illness. How about being grabbed out of your family, being shackled, and this much space between you and the next person, people dying, and your family being thrown overboard. Then you get to somewhere you've never been before, and then they say you don't get to speak your language, you don't get to worship the way you want to worship, you don't get to dress the way that you have this. We're going to give you the life that we want you to have. So as enslaved beings here in the States, then what began to happen was if you began to have any type of mental infirmity, then you were beaten or even killed because you could not work.
Right.
You could
I'm not going to feed you and clothe you and keep you if you can't go out in the field and do what I paid for you to do.
Right. So you can't do that. You got to go. And so that's exactly what would happen. And so a lot of times families would try to shield their family members, their children away from others. But oftentimes what happened was if it meant that we were going to have to, somebody else was going to have to take up the slack for you because you couldn't work, then somebody told.
Right.
And so that was how and so it just began to get traditions traded down through generations around this stigma. And so now, and then we began to deal with how do we become more palatable? And literally what that meant was, how do we become more white? How do we become more acceptable to the majority, the majority culture, so I can't say that this thing is happening to me. I can't say that because everyone with mental illness, let me just be very clear, are not people walking around because they hear voices. No,
right.
Are talking to themselves. Most folks, the number one is anxiety. Most people have dealt with anxiety and depression, whether it was temporary or it was clinical and diagnosed. And so when you have that, and then again, going back to the church, then you've got to deal with the shame of, and my own life, when my father unexpectedly transitioned when I was 10 and my brother was 14. My mother had done everything she possibly could. My father was in the military at the time, and she did everything she possibly could to help us. We got through that service with all the people and all the people coming by and all the things. And me and my brother and I, we cried every single night. And so I remember one Sunday, one of the men at the church said to my mother, well, what do you mean? Because he was also the husband of like her best friend. He said, what do you mean you're taking your children to therapy? You girl, you need to pray. She said, hold up.
Oh.
She said, hold up. Are you trying to tell me, who I'm with my children day in and day out, I listen to my children cry themselves to sleep every single day? Because what we had was the year before, my father died within a year of my parents divorcing.
Oh, no. No, that's not layers of trauma.
No. So we had the
children are resilient. You should have been able to deal with that.
So my hero goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Then my hero goes away forever.
Right.
Right. And so my understanding at the time was there's complete disconnection.
Yeah.
Right? Complete separation. And so I didn't know how to deal with that. And my brother didn't either. So my mother said, listen, we have through the military, we have this access, we're going to use it. And she found a therapist. This is 1975. So there's no Black therapist for us, right?
Oh, yeah.
She finds a male and a female in the same practice. It saved my life.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure.
She told my uncle, because I call him uncle, she told my uncle, you have no idea of what you're talking about. I'm willing to try this because you're not there when they're crying themselves to sleep every single night. It has been months. And then you're not there when I leave them and go to my room and cry, because in that moment, my mother had been married more than she had been divorced. So she was just like, she was a widow.
Right.
And so it was all of us struggling to find some semblance of hope, something that could keep us and I had suicidal ideations as a kid growing up, all the things, because I just couldn't reconcile. I couldn't reconcile what those church folks were telling me about how much God loved me. Couldn't be the truth. That could not be the truth.
Yep.
And especially in that understanding, if God was going to take my daddy, oh, God could not love me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm done with y'all.
Right.
I'm done with y'all because y'all lie. Y'all don't tell the truth. I'm done.
Yep.
I'm done. And I still went every Sunday, but I was done. When I say closed off, done. But therapy saved my life. It is the reason that I'm still here today. It is the reason that I can sit on this stream and talk to you and talk to this audience. It's the reason why I'm still here. And so I always said, it's Jesus and therapy.
Thank you.
It's like, listen.
It takes a village. It takes a village.
And it can be Jesus, therapy, and meds.
Thank you.
You need them.
And coffee.
And coffee, whatever you need, for whatever it is. And like you said, even if meds are not for you, but to calm your anxiety or to calm your depression, maybe you go and you buy edibles, or you go and you do this, whatever. That's the thing, because you don't like the way the medication makes you feel, or this is easier for you, or whatever. Finding what that is. And so many people have so many judgments, and you haven't walked not even a mile. You haven't even, and travel. Yes, Kelly, and travel. And that's therapeutic. Tim and I, my husband and I, we were away for a couple of days last week. Radically changed my life.
Yep.
Because it was the quiet. We weren't distracted by cell phones. We weren't distracted by the TV, all the things. Like, we tried to watch the debate and we couldn't even get in. We're like, and scene.
Exactly.
So grateful. And so, yeah, so I love that all of these elements that you're weaving so beautifully into and into this interview today. So let's talk about when you began this, because I know that if you'll name for the audience, I know you've had several businesses and you still have several businesses. Let's talk about that. And then how was that something that you all shared together? And did you keep it after the divorce? And how did you begin to navigate once you left that relationship, once you dissolved that relationship?
So especially for me, one of the things that I actually credit my mental illness with is making me the creative person I am today. So what I find is most of us that have muddled through life dealing with ADD, depression, whatnot, is we learn amazing coping skills. So that we do look like we're okay. So we do look like we're smart when we can't figure out letters and alphabets because we're dyslexic. So we come up with all kinds of coping skills that once we embrace makes us a creative genius, makes us see the world differently. So for me especially, I don't see problems. I see things I've got to overcome. So that's kind of led to that serial entrepreneur. So one of my businesses is called Wild West Skincare, and we actually make skincare for 450 different brands around the world.
Wow.
So it's called private label. So basically you have a bottle of skincare and you're like, our friend Kelly says, we got to have a fundraiser. Let's sell some lotion for the theater. Great. We slap her logo on there. We put manufactured for whatever. Boom. She's got a product ready to go. So people all over the world are buying their favorite eye cream in Beverly Hills, not knowing it's made in this little building in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we just slap that name of that dermatologist on the front for them. So that's one of my businesses. The other one that I own, which is similar, it's all making products with New Mexico cedar. It's called Clear Light New Mexico. And it's all made with this amazing New Mexico cedar oil that we have here that is so New Mexico. So we make it's candles and incense and red and green chili flakes because we dry our own chilies, and we make, so everything New Mexico is what kind of falls under that.
Nice.
But yeah, and then on top of that, part of my journey, like you brought up, was just a little over 2 years ago, deciding that one of my teenage dreams was to be an actor. So I started getting into that. One of the things that I love about my ADD, my depression, the way my brain works, especially when I'm medicated, is I can handle multiple things at a time and actually get very bored if I'm not doing multiple things. So serial entrepreneur literally means you've got that many businesses going on. And a lot of times what I do is try something new. Either it catches on or it doesn't. So it's a way for me to test different products, different ideas, different things, and it all falls together. So we had all of that together when we were married. So our biggest thing was we used to own a hotel, spa, coffee shop in New Orleans. And the really interesting thing was we bought the hotel from this fabulous, her name was PJ Holbrook. She was this little pudgy old white lady. So we bought the inn from her, and it was funny because we became friends with her through this process of buying it. And her concern as an old woman in the South wasn't the fact that she was selling her business to a gay couple, because she was like, people will accept that. Her concern in the South, so this was in the 1996, right? So it wasn't that long ago. Her concern in the South was what were people going to say when they showed up to an interracial gay couple, right? So she was like, I just want you to know this could be an issue in case it comes up, whatever. She's like, it's not an issue for me, but I want you to know what could be an issue. But, again, I looked at that as, okay, that's a diversity issue. That's something we can easily overcome. And either you like us or you don't.
Right.
Whatever. So, but I mean, so we did all of these businesses together. The great news for me was when we got divorced, We actually got divorced on a Bravo TV show called Untying the Knot. So the divorce is very public. Because one of my things I've also learned in life is, yes, disinfectant, shine the light on it. You know, we're getting a divorce. We don't have to be whispering, divorce.
Right.
No, if I'm gonna get a divorce, we're gonna do it. I'm gonna get paid to do it. So I'm gonna do it on a Bravo show. And, you know, she's the one that came in and kind of split up the stuff. But he had decided that he wanted to move back to Indiana where his family is anyway. So I bought him out of his part of the equity in the building. His part of I was lucky. I didn't have to buy him out of the business because he started another business while we were still together, like making skincare products. So he started a competing business at the same time while we were going through the divorce. So I was like, I'm not going to pay you for a business that you've already started a business competing with. So I was like, oops, sorry for you. But anyway, it worked out beautifully. So
Sorry,
yes, I have gone on to do the same stuff now, just as my vision and what I want.
Nice.
And yeah, so that's only been now, what, 5 years ago. And so that's the other thing too that I've noticed with depression, and people need to understand, some depression is situational.
Yes.
There are times when the situation you're in adds to that depression. There are times that depression is going to be a short little bit of you're sad about something or you're not motivated about something. What I have is chronic depression. If I don't have the brain chemistry working right, then I get the aggravation, I get no motivation, all those kind of things. Now, the most interesting thing recently, so before we knew about most of this COVID stuff, I had in March, I did a week in Durango for a film festival. I did a week in LA for meetings and whatnot. When I got back home in the middle of March, I had a week where I had a headache and couldn't taste and couldn't smell. But at that time, we didn't know that was really COVID. Nobody knew about the lack of smell, lack of taste thing. So I just thought it was allergies, because in New Mexico, we blame everything on allergies. Oh, yeah, it's that time of year. It's allergies, right?
Right.
Yeah, my eyes glued shut. Must be allergies. So I just assumed it was allergies for a week. I'm pretty sure now it was COVID.
Right.
But after that, even on my medication, I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the strength. So I had that long-term fatigue that they've been talking about after COVID. And I had to, as we like to say, I had to pray on it, because I was like, I'm on my meds. Things are good. Oh, it's got to be that. So I just had to make a conscious decision that I was going to pull myself up by my bootstraps, get out of bed, and go start my day. And what I've had to do now is really just I'm much better, so I can actually get through a whole day now, where in the old days, meaning March, April,
right,
way back, if you can think
way
back
back
that
when
far,
back when
way back, I would like work for a couple hours, have to go lay down for a couple hours, work for a couple hours. So for me, it was almost scary, because that fatigue showed up the same way as my depression showed up, with kind of being tired and whatnot. So then we are hardest on ourselves. So then we start asking ourselves, what have I done wrong? What am I not doing right? Why is this happening? I'm taking my meds, whatnot. And we almost have to get out of our heads and stop judging ourselves and go back to, this is just a physical issue with my body. My body is tired now. So as a grown-up, you get to do things that are good for you, like go lay down for 2 hours.
Yes.
So you have to give yourself permission that every day when you show up to this life, every day is not going to be the same. Your energy level is not going to be the same. Your outlook on life is not going to be the same. So I also know, based on my planner for the day or whatever, what is my energy level today? Can I conquer certain things? Can I not conquer certain things? And you have to give yourself permission to not do things. One of my favorite, I'm all about sharing the inappropriate memes on Facebook, but one of my favorites was something like, 2 hours ago we decided that we were going to go have dinner or drinks, but you know, I was younger and had a better outlook on life then, and now 2 hours later I can't do it, right? Like we have to be okay with that, like literally.
It's so true, and I'm glad that you brought up the that, you know, especially during this COVID era, we can many people did not come into COVID-19 with diagnoses, right? They did not come into, but many of us were triggered by the disconnection, the disengagement, the no touching, the sheltering in place, the quarantining, all the things, the mask wearing, all the things that have come into our life that now it is a way of life.
It is, yeah.
It's a way of life.
And we're not okay with it. We've got to be okay with not being okay.
And it's so important to tell ourselves that, I mean, I know I found myself similar to what you said, to say, okay, I have this today. I am going to do that thing. And if I feel like I want to do something additional after that, I will. It's
a bonus though. That's a bonus. If we get to the extra thing, fine. But yeah.
And I've had to say that to myself and really, really become okay with it. And so many folks were something very temporary came upon them. And then there are those who already had a diagnosis that it became like they were on this steep curve that was like, okay, this is getting worse. Because the other thing is, before we started, doctors began and therapists began having teletherapy. It was very difficult for so many people. My routine, I know that on Thursdays I do therapy. I know that on Wednesdays or whatever the day may be, and then people weren't able to do that. I know even just for my mother, just being, and she's 81, being in the rhythm of, this is when I go to the doctor for this. This is when I go to the ophthalmologist. This is when I go and get blood work, all those things. And not being able to do that was producing anxiety in her. And when I realized that it was, I said, okay, Mom, I'm gonna come get you, and we're gonna go and do these things, because I was really about making sure that she was safe. Like, I'm not even in her home. I mean, I'm not even in her home, because I want to keep her safe. And she lives here in Tulsa. So what I'll do is let's just go out and drive. Today is a beautiful day. The sun is out. You can get some vitamin D. Let's just go and hang out. And, you know, she wears all of her stuff, and she says funny things like, she's like, I don't know the ways out here. I don't know y'all's ways out here. She was like, I don't know y'all's ways out here. So I have to tell her, okay, Mama, this is what we're doing now. But that has been an assault on the mind. And then this kind of roller coaster we've been on of loss, and then emergence, and loss, and then emergence, and then loss, and then emergence. And it's like, oh my God, it is very dizzying, right? Yeah. And it keeps you kind of going like this and trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And you want to stay engaged. And sometimes you just have to say, hey, I got to tap out. I got to tap out for a minute. I got to tap and know that tapping out is not final. It just means that for this moment that I have to. I'm going to read something that I get these little moments of inspiration from one of my favorite people in the whole world, is the Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. He said, become deeply aware that there is something about you that is whole, perfect, and always unfolding.
Amen.
And it's so true. And because one of the things that this COVID era has done for me has allowed me, like you said, to really allow this fullness of creativity to unfold and be released, without feeling like I needed to. In the other world, there were so many voices about, you start a lot of things. You do a lot of different things. And I would feel like, well, I do a lot of things. But for me, in order for me to stay engaged mentally, emotionally, and spiritually and creatively, I need all of those things.
Right.
When I don't have them, when I do not have them, I'm a different person. I'm a different person, and it's a very, very low vibration at that point. And so how I stay engaged is entertaining a lot of different things and playing and staying curious, and engaging with a lot of different kinds of people, because that is a part of who I am, and I get to allow all the different parts of my personality to come alive and to be inside of a world that oftentimes says, no, you can only be like this. If you're in if you're in my family business, if you're in the preaching world and the ministry world, well, you can't do that and cuss. I beg to differ.
Thank you. I agree.
I beg to differ, because sometimes certain folk and situations call for certain words. That's all I'm going to say about that.
And we spend way too much time worrying about what we can and can't do based on rules that other people give us. So, I'm a grown-ass man. Grown-ass man. Yeah.
Come on with that. And I love that. So talk about a little bit about how this journey into acting began to unfold, because one of the things that struck me, and I'm so like, I got so lost inside of it when you said it a couple of weeks ago, how you preempted a process that should have taken, or I should say normally takes, usually takes this many years, and you shortened that thing into a much closer distance from when you started to when you got to where you are today. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Totally. Yeah. So one of the many things I've learned in this journey, which is a lot of failures, a lot of successes, but honestly, as they say, you learn more from the failures than you ever learn from the successes. But one of the things that I've learned is, my background, I have a journalism and marketing degree and whatnot. So when I started to look into acting, what I thought was, and I see it with my friends who are artists and my friends that, do all these creative things. They're really good at the creative stuff, but they're not doing the business stuff. I paint these beautiful pictures. Great. What do you do to market them? I paint these beautiful pictures. So they don't really know what to do with it. So when I was started into acting, I was 47 at the time. And, by that point, your life is over. It's 47. Oh my God. I don't have the rest of my life to do this. I've got to get in here and get it done quick. So how am I going to do it quick? So what I decided was I took a couple classes. I decided I really liked it. And what they say in acting is, it takes 10 years. You got to do this. You got to do those things. And I, at 47, said I don't have time for that. But what I did was take everything that I know about being an entrepreneur and applied it to being an actor. So as a friend of mine, his name is Basil Hoffman. He's 83 years old. If you've ever watched any of the old TV shows like MASH or whatever, he's that guy that you see in every show, because he's worked on 180 some different things. But what Basil says is in our industry, in show business is the bigger word. So I took what I knew about running a business and I broke down acting and went from no acting experience to now being a member of SAG-AFTRA, which is the acting union, in 2 years. So I was able to I looked at, what is the journey of an actor? What do you have to do? What are the main points? Well, you got to get an agent. Then you got to get in front of casting directors. And then you got to do a great audition. And then you got to get hired. Okay, great. So what do I do to move that process along? And I applied my marketing and my business to that. Now, did I know if it would work or not? No, but you don't know that when you start any journey.
No, it starts with an idea.
It does.
It starts with an idea, and then you got to throw some discipline in there. I was teaching this last night. You start with an idea. You've got to throw some discipline in there. You have to become literally obsessed with it, right?
Yes. Yes.
And determination, and because you've talked about it already, about what happens when you get derailed, and then you've got to mix a whole lot of imagination inside of it, and be willing to get your ass kicked. In order to know what you don't know when you started in the ideation process, right? Yep,
totally. Yeah. And it's, I also, one of my jobs was in market research. So where they look at, right out of college, where they look at things and like, if we show this TV commercial to a group of people, are they going to buy Tide or are they going to buy Cheer laundry detergent? And then they would scientifically be able to figure that out. So it's anything you do in life, even if it's creative, has that scientific side to it.
Yes.
I paint beautiful pictures. Great. Do you post them on Facebook? I don't know. Let's try that. You post them on Facebook. Do you either get publicity out of it or you don't? Okay, great. That didn't work. What's next? So you've also got to make sure that the journey doesn't have sacred cows that can't be touched, can't be changed, or whatnot. Yes. One of the things that we talked about, I think, with Deeply Superficial. So I wrote my series pilot about they say, write what you know. 40-something gay, white, divorced guy who's got crazy friends and family around him. Life is hectic. Life is all this stuff. How's he deal with it? So I wrote that. I have this amazing, the main reason I did it was because I want comedy. I have no comedy footage to show people. So in acting, we have reels. Here's a reel of my stuff I've already done. So then a casting director can look at it and go, oh, that's good. Okay, yeah, he's been on set. He's going to act right. He knows what he's doing. He's going to show up prepared. Perfect. So I call it proof of concept. So I needed proof of concept that I was funny and witty and all those things. So Deeply Superficial gave that to me. Now, when I start promoting Deeply Superficial, I also have to realize that depending upon who buys the idea, they might already have an actor in mind for that role. So I may or may not get to even star in my own TV show.
Right.
But I have to be okay with that because I'm putting the TV show out there as a piece of creative work that doesn't have to have Keith in it. But there's people I know who write things and they're only going to sell it if they can star in it or whatever. It's so easy to limit ourselves versus just kind of being like, I'm putting this TV show out in the universe and we're going to see what the universe does with it.
So true with that. So easy to limit ourselves. I love that because most of us, I had to type that into the chat because most of us grew up with things like, these family things of limitation, whether that we heard sayings like, you ask for something, well, money doesn't grow on trees.
Oh, yeah, no.
Or in my case, I heard things like, well, black people don't do that. Well,
right.
Black people don't do that. Well, this one does. This one does. This one does. Now,
and I can only imagine what black women don't do.
OMG.
Because that's a whole different thing.
When I went to school, when I went to college, I had my god sister. One of them told me that why would you get a degree in psychology? Nobody does that. Black people don't do that. Girl, you need to become a teacher. You need to become, have you thought about law? Have you thought about this? Like, no, and no, and no. What I have thought about is I am deeply, and I have, before I even knew what it was, I was deeply, deeply, deeply and profoundly moved by how people thought. What made you do that? Why people were gathered in clusters over here. So my degrees are in psychology and sociology because that is how my brain works. And then researching things. I mean, when you talked about, okay, I went to the library, I looked this up. Listen, it's a thing called the Googles. Come on.
Woo, girl.
The Googles will get you right every single time. Whatever you don't know, figure it out on the Googles. You can go to YouTube. We're actually live right now on my YouTube channel. You can go.
We are on the YouTube.
Listen.
Oh.
I forgot to tell you. I did members to tell you. We're live. We're live on the YouTube. Why? Because it's another platform in which to share what it is that we're talking about. We've got about 4 minutes. This has been such a rich conversation, and all of the intricacies of your journey, your personal journey, and us being able to kind of go back and forth around even shared experiences. And one of the things that I think that we miss so much is talking about our lived experiences, so that speaking about it without shame, without guilt, without shrouding it in secrecy. And I put in the chat earlier that secrets still kill. And secrets kill your destiny. Secrets have the propensity to keep you landlocked in family pathology. So then you repeat whatever that crap was back in there. We repeat it. And so being able to bring that light in, being able to share the real matters of our heart is exactly why I created Brave Me Nation. It's why I created Brave Interviews, because I believe that people need to have an opportunity to speak boldly, to speak bravely and brilliantly, release into the world their full selves, so that somebody else can identify and say, oh, wait a minute, that's me. And look at what Keith Allen West is doing with a diagnosis, on medication, doing all the things, taking Jesus and therapy and the medication, all the things. And so in the last couple of minutes, what I'd like to talk to you about is, what's your spiritual practice?
So I have the oddest combination. I studied with a voodoo priestess in New Orleans for 8 years.
Come on.
So I've studied my voodoo. I add my Buddhism. I add my Christianity. I actually have 2 functioning voodoo altars in my house right now. The great thing about voodoo is it's also very Christian based, because the statue that's on my voodoo altar is Mary. She's right there. I light candles to Mary every day, right? So I have that all of it. That's the other thing too, is to me, religion, spirituality, it's a smorgasbord, baby. I take a dabble of this. I'm gonna go to the salad bar, and then I'm gonna wander over here and get me a piece from the carving station. The only thing I don't throw into my food or into my religion is pork, because I have a pet pig, so we leave that out. But other than that, it's a smorgasbord. But I every day I decide what I'm going to do to honor where I am now, and then figure out where I'm going to go. And one of the things that I had to pray on, one of the things that has shown up repeatedly in my life, is I come from people that don't ask for help, because when you ask for help, that's a sign of weakness.
Come on with that. Oh, now you're speaking a word. Come on, Keith.
So one of my best therapists ever told me, baby, you're not asking for help. No, you're asking for support. And I was like, just changing that word means it's okay to ask for stuff. And we as a community have got to become more and more okay with asking for stuff, especially when we're not okay.
Especially when we're not okay. And that has been one of the biggest things. My auntie, during this COVID era, transitioned, and she ascended back in March. And one of the biggest hurdles for her, learning in her 80s, what it meant to literally accept love and deep appreciation, and you didn't have to do anything.
No. Oh my Lord.
And to be supported by people who said that they love you and then demonstrated, and you don't have to do anything in return, because that was, I did this course called Landmark. And one of the things that it talks about is the racket. So one of her rackets was, if you do something for me, I must do something for you.
Hey, tit for tat, baby, tit for tat.
Because we get into this comparison thing, and it's like, I don't ever want you to feel it. And it was very genuine. It was very genuine, but I didn't know until about, I knew outside of her speaking about her lived experience, it was something that I sensed, because my discernment is very high. And so and my intuition is on point. And so I knew something very, very harsh had happened in her world when she was young, just because how she presented and demonstrated. So I knew that, right? So she began to tell me, because she knew she was leaving. And so one night she sat me down, and I called it story time. We had story time for 4 hours. And she told me, she said, she said, now, baby, this is just the first part. I'm not finished. But what she told me informed me about her lived experience. There was never a time in her life where she didn't have to earn and have to do so much in order to be loved by people who were supposed to love and care for her, who didn't. And who abused and misused and all the things, and traumatized her. For that trauma lasted until the moment she left here.
Yeah.
And I knew that my assignment was to gather her and gather people around her, to love her so deeply that she would know. And she's like, oh, baby, who's doing that? I was like, oh no, they already called me and said that they're gonna take care of that for you. She would just cry.
Yeah.
And it was a profound moment. The day that she ascended, it was a profound moment for me, because I told her, I was able to keep my word. I'm gonna be with you to the very end. And when I got that call, our hospitals were closing that day. And they said, you can come in. And I did. And then up until the last moment, until, she slipped away into the other world. And but she felt, and I knew she knew I was in that room.
Mm-hmm.
And that support, and I could feel it, and I knew it. And I told the doctor, I said, she knows that I'm here. And so she feels supported to move on.
Yep.
And she did. And she did in a very powerful and beautiful and magnificent way. She did it on her own terms, period.
And how amazing is it that you got to be part of that?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I love that you said that, just shifting that word from someone doing something for you.
Yep.
And
I need help. No, baby, you don't need help. You need support.
And say, no, support. I feel supported. And that's what my whole campaign around My Black Mental Health Matters initiative is about, giving support for those folks who don't even know, number one, that they need it, number two, where the resources are, and number three, that they're not alone.
Right.
And that's such an important awareness to have. Keith, this has been an exceptional hour. I love you so much, and just
love you. Yeah. Thank you for all you do. You're just spectacular. But this goes to show the power of the universe and the power of people that are out there that you and I didn't even know each other. What, 3 weeks ago? Did not. We knew of, right? We know of lots of people. But if we would take the time in our lives to get to know people and not just know of them, look what we can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been amazing. I have scrolling at the bottom, there's a banner with
My
your
website.
website up there. And then there is scrolling at the bottom, Cash App, and those who feel compelled to donate, that money is going directly to Mental Health Association Oklahoma to do the work that they do so beautifully. We literally just came out of a symposium last week around racial healing, as we are on the eve of the 100th anniversary and commemoration of the worst massacre in the country, 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And as we're on the eve of that, we all know, and as we're on the eve of November the 3rd, we all know that it takes all of us. It will take all of us to shift and transform our country, to transform our world, for it to be a better place, not only for us to live in before we leave here and before we ascend, but also for our children and for those who are coming behind them. This has been our hour of brave interviews. This has been my guest, Keith Allen West, an extraordinary human being. Remember, it is your choice to live bravely, boldly, and brilliantly every single day of your life. Thank you so much.
And caffeinated.
And caffeinated. Thanks for joining us. Bye now.